Well, hey guys, welcome back to Align Online. It is September 8th, 2020. We're coming off of a 3-day weekend. Hope you had an amazing Labor Day weekend. And man, we're ready to jump back into this today. My name's Graylin Griffin. I'm one of the team members here at Alignment Leadership. And today we'll be joined by my good buddy, great friend, Mr. Josh Boyer.
What's
Welcome to
happening?
people.
Hey. I'm Josh. If you've been watching these every week, you've seen me before, and excited to be back for another week of Align Online.
Yes, sir. Well, we are extremely excited about some of the things we've got coming up. So, Josh, kind of remind everyone what we're doing these for.
Yes. Well, we are digging into culture. We're digging into the definition of that. We're unpacking 5 common traits of our worldview and how each of us show up and shape the culture every day on our teams that we're a part of. So we're just like taking piece by piece one trait each week and just diving deep into what does this mean and how does it impact us from a working standpoint when we work on the teams that we're on. So we're walking through that. If you are really interested in this topic, culture, organizational culture, team cultures, and how people work together, you're gonna love these chats. You're gonna love our book, and you can if you're already here, you're already a member of Align Online, check out Unit 2 in the units section of our page. There is we're offering a book study chapter by chapter. You get a chance to hear from the author himself, Chris Muroff, as he just gives you a little bit of an intro to the chapter, what went into that chapter, what his thoughts are on it. And you can pick up the ebook right now or pre-order your hard copy. We'll put a link to that in the comments. So check out the book, get the book. The digital version, like the ebook version, is already available. You can get your copy. You can read along. You can go through the unit right here on our Facebook page and just get an in-depth walk through and study on culture and how you create culture. In fact, the last video that we just put up there is Chris is talking about this very topic. He's talking about culture, creating culture, and be sure to check that out.
Man, thank you so much, Josh, for the recap. Guys, it's worth it. If you are, like you said, if you're interested in this, you want to dive a little deeper, there's a bunch of resources out there. And just to bring you up to speed, if you weren't with us last week, one of the common traits that we spoke about last week was tradition. And the way we define traditions and some of those key points are traditions are those automatic responses that we feel some sort of connection to, strong conviction or obligation. And it's key to understand too that a lot of traditions actually start out as preferences. And so we're going to dive into that later today. But another cool thing about the tradition to understand about people, about your own personal connection to traditions. The traditions are usually those experiences that you were trying to recreate, something that you found success in, something that created usually a positive experience, regardless if it was professional or within your family. So those are things that we discussed last week, those automatic responses that we have some sort of connection or conviction to, and they usually start out as a preference that we're trying to recreate in an experience. So today we're going to jump a little deeper into preferences. So
yeah, I think even before we jump into it, it's really important just to point out how each of these, we call them the 5 common traits. It's not an exhaustive list. There's more than just these 5, but we just think these are really predominant ones. But it's really important to point out how all 5 of these traits really work together. Graylin, what you were just saying, Graylin, I heard you say experiences, I heard you say traditions, I heard you say preferences. So you've already mentioned like 3 of the 5. And it's just important to note how all 5 of these are always present really all the time. And they're always like informing the others, and they're all working together. It's a real complex relationship, kind of a web that's kind of formed between these, how they're all just interrelated and interconnected. And so we're doing our best to kind of make those connection points, but we invite you to make the connections, to leave comments, leave your thoughts in the chats of each of these videos that we post. You can totally jump in on the conversation and interact with us a little bit and chime in, let us know what you think, what connections you see. But I just think it's really important to point out that connection, how we're carrying around these traits all the time, and they're all just kind of bouncing off one another. Experiences inform some preferences and inform our traditions, and sometimes our hopes inform those. So it's just like the connections are fascinating, and we get really geeked out about this stuff and love talking about it. And so, like Graylin said, we're going to talk about preferences this week, coming
Mm-hmm.
off of traditions. So, just to kind of warm us up here to this thought, Graylin, I thought it'd be fun if I could ask you a little random preference question. I was just playing this game with my kids and my parents sitting around the campfire this week. A little would you rather.
Okay. Okay.
So so this is really random here, but this is you have to answer this question as if you are forced to make a decision. There is no option C. So would you rather, and this is a fun one to play with your kids if you haven't played this, they'll love it. Well, at least if your kids are elementary age like mine. Okay,
Yeah.
so Graylin, would you rather, okay, you're forced to do this. You only
Mm-hmm.
got one option or the other. Would you rather have a head the size and shape of a watermelon or the size and shape of a banana?
Oh wow. Oh man. Rapid fire. Watermelon. Watermelon.
Watermelon. Wow. Just a big bulbous
Just a
gargantuan head. Okay.
big old meaty. Okay, I got you. I see your watermelon. And I'll ask you this: would you rather read a book or watch a movie? Would you rather read a book or watch a movie?
I would say, by and large, I'm probably more of like watch the movie, though that preference is changing slightly the older I get, I think.
Yeah,
But right now, I think I'm still like 52% movie.
I totally get that. Totally get that. We love our movies, and it's so accessible now. So
Yeah.
I got another one for you. Would you rather work with? Here we go. So I'm gonna give you three options, but you only can pick one.
Okay.
Would you rather work with people, data, or things? Would you rather
People,
work with people,
people,
data, or
data, or
things?
things. I think my preference would be people
Mm-hmm.
versus. I don't think I get kind of interested in some data, but yeah, people
Sure.
for sure. Yeah. So as we're kind of shifting here to think about more work context, if you were,
Okay.
and I think I kind of know how you'd answer this because we've worked together quite a while, but so a challenge, or call it a challenge, a crisis, or a problem comes up at work. Would you rather jump right into fixing it, or would you rather slow down, try to identify all the moving parts, and actually formulate a plan of attack?
Oh man, I'm definitely a plan guy when it comes to a problem. When there's a
Okay.
problem, I like to observe, like to take in some information so I can make the best decision.
Yeah,
Yeah. So
that's
I'm gonna
good.
stop
So
there. I'm gonna stop
that
there
kind
before I like jump in
of that kind of relates to that. I was thinking about a work example of where I think you and our preferences are kind of like highlight and kind of come out, and versus other people we worked on the team. So some of you who are part of a Align Online here know that we were part of a different organization that we launched out of, and we used to do these monthly leadership culture professional development events, like monthly almost. And so we had to plan these just regularly, these all staff meetings, all staff conferences. And so Graylin and I had that preference of being well planned ahead. We wanted to be 2 or 3 events ahead of ourselves, right?
hmm
And we had this preference for having the agenda, the theme, the talks, the who's doing what, maybe a guest speaker here and there, and we'd have it all planned out.
Oh yeah.
Other people in the organization had a preference, and this is, I'm using like kind of like cut and dry kind of comparisons here. It wasn't, I'm sure there's a little bit of back and forth, but
Sure.
other preferences were like, well, let's not plan it out all the details and lock ourselves into it. Don't print the booklets yet, till a
hmm
week or two before the event, just because we want to at least maintain some flexibility to change things at the last minute if we need to. So when you said that I knew how you were going to answer that previous question, that you like to kind of plan out all the pieces before moving forward. So I'm like, yeah, I
Yes.
knew you'd say that, because I remember you and I had that similar preference of wanting to just be like months ahead of ourselves and stick to the plan. But you and I kind of going through that just kind of journey when you work with other people of like, okay, well, there's some value in maintaining flexibility. And so kind of you and I learning to kind of, kind of pull the fader down on our preference and increase the fader on other people's so that we could just kind of balance it out a little bit and learn from each other.
Yes.
But yeah, so preferences. What we want to dig into today is what are they? Where do they come from? How do they impact culture? And why should we talk about these things? So if you think about a workplace example, you might have some that come to your mind immediately. And yeah, again, I'd be curious to hear what you kind of observe in your team or workplace setting. Be totally feel free to share those in comments. We'd love to hear those. But yeah, let's jump into it here, Graylin. Let's
Yeah.
unpack these things. We last week talked about traditions. Now we're talking about preferences. What are they? How do you sum this up?
Yeah. So I guess the way I would say for a preference is the way we like to do something, our way of doing something that we prefer, we like more than the alternative. Whatever the other options are, I come into it with a certain desire or preference, and how something should be handled. And it can happen really quickly. It can happen in a moment. I would just walk in with this desired outcome, this preference. And so I think that's a pretty broad, and I think that definition would make sense to someone just without any context or understanding of what alignment leadership is or where this fits within our philosophy. But yeah, just that my way of doing something that I prefer over something else.
Yeah, I think if you just keep it as kind of like broad like that and simple like that, where we really act out of our preferences then really like all the time. Ways of the ways we communicate, the ways we would prefer to solve a problem, or our working style, ways that we would prefer to organize things. I just think like our preferences they're just always active, and
Right.
even when we don't know it, like they're always active. We're always observing our teammates' preferences. We may not think through categorically that that's what we're seeing. We're just kind of seeing something on the outside, or seeing like, oh, well, that's a different way of approaching it. But yeah, I think these are things like you said. It happens in a moment. I think often it's somewhat like just our personality type that influences this. I think there's a lot
For
of
sure.
so like but I mean, there's one like personality that I think influences preferences. What are some other things that you think go into shaping our preferences or like influencing that?
Yeah. This big discussion of worldview. I think kind of going back to what you were saying about our personality, your personality type will influence your preferences, whether you're an introvert, you're an extrovert, whether you're task or people oriented. And it's the beauty of just being individuals. But yeah, I think all of these things, all of these influences that we experience on a daily basis from our upbringing until now, influence the preferences that we make and that we kind of walk into an environment with. So absolutely, man.
And I think I think subconsciously a lot of us, as you enter the workday and you enter into just what you're setting about to do, we're all kind of, I think kind of beneath the surface, we have this thought in our mind of really like trying to be successful or experience fulfillment. We want something like out of what we do, right? We want something fulfilling, meaningful, where I think everyone is seeking, purpose and meaning and value in what they do. I don't think I've ever met anyone who'd be like, no, I'd be content doing a completely meaningless job my whole life, right? I think most people are like, no, I think I'd prefer to do something that's meaningful and that, I'm passionate about, right? So on that track, we're all kind of trying to kind of just do that. We want to do meaningful work. We want to do things that have value. We want to know that our work has meaning. We're all on that journey toward really finding that fulfillment. I think preferences is a big one that comes up for the things that we're doing to try to find our pathway.
For
So
sure.
and this is kind of a connection to traditions in my mind, because
Hmm.
what starts out there, when we talked about traditions last week, we said traditions is something that like in a moment it just starts out as a simple preference, right?
Right.
But it proved successful, it worked, and now you want to like, and now you're trying to recreate that experience from the past over and over and over again. It's just kind of like it becomes solidified a little bit. So
Hmm.
our preferences are like what we have said in our definition is that like these start to become a pathway that we start to pursue, a pattern we develop that like, hey, in a single moment it might have just been I've never done it that way before, but I think I just prefer to do it this way, and then it works, and we're like, huh,
Hmm.
and now we're trying to recreate that, um, yeah, over and over and over again. But
Absolutely. I love that piece of the definition. This portion of the definition. If you could throw the definition up for us, our producer in the background, Zach. Thank you so much. If you have it, I'm not sure if you have that there, but that last line is really one of the things that stuck out to me because again, it ties it back to what a tradition is. But those things, oftentimes, like you said, preferences create the pathways
yeah,
and the patterns. The traditions are the things that we want to recreate, those pathways, those
yeah,
patterns, on this journey to fulfillment. And that's the beautiful part of like kind of just taking time to unpack this and understand how this influences how we show up and why it's important for us to talk about them specifically
yeah.
in a professional setting. So
Yeah, and
let's
I
kind of
think on that
transition there.
note, like, why is it so important? I think that's like I think that's the next thing we should kind of be exploring, and that's kind of what we're doing with all these traits. Is like, why is it so important to understand this?
Right.
I think I think a lot of conflicts on teams or within your interpersonal relationships, even outside of work, say at home, often kind of like come down to just a difference of preference
Hmm.
and a different methodology, a different reasoning why. And so I think a lot of preferences, or I think a lot of conflicts on teams, kind of like are really just a difference of preference on how to maybe like one group or one person thinks let's handle this situation this way, and another group's like, well, I think this way would be better, and it just takes that you just gotta wrestle that out. That it can
Yeah.
create there can be tension around difference of preferences, even in working style. Like so, a lot of times I think what we initially experience on an emotional level of maybe frustration or confusion or bewilderment or like maybe an agitation or something like that on like an emotional level, we might just be looking at what we see on the outside. It's like oh, there's Graylin. Like Graylin always does it that way, whatever.
Yeah.
And we're thinking about just that simple. We never take it really any further to say, oh, well, maybe that's just a preference he has,
Hmm.
and I wonder how he developed that preference.
Yeah.
So I think it's really important to talk about preferences in terms of, I mean, anything, working style, communication style, problem solving style, task oriented versus people oriented. Talk about like your preferences there, because a lot of conflicts I think arise at that level of preference, and um, it's opportunity for just great actually connection and storytelling.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, as we were thinking about this and talking about this earlier, one of the things that about something that's kind of under the surface and underlying something that is just where we don't know all of the context or
Yeah,
the reason a person shows up this way um, can be eliminated through a conversation. And you said just kind of like I love the way you worded it. It was really taking the time to address the elephant or to dig this stuff out. And it's
yeah,
important because when you take the time to have the dialogue, it creates an opportunity for understanding. And then
hmm,
then it creates, this really um, value oriented culture where people's
yeah,
diversity, now has an opportunity to impact the culture that we're so desperately trying to create for
yeah,
our organization. So I love that you said
yeah.
that. But yeah, it takes
That's right.
time.
And I think even if you don't talk about it, uh, the culmination of people's preferences are shaping the culture. There's a culture that exists often around
Hmm.
some preferences. And if you're not really talking about it, then you're not really taking the opportunity to answer some maybe hard questions like, is does this sort of kind of status quo, like what or the organic way we arrived at doing it this way, does that even fit our purpose or these guiding principles or these values we say we want to be about? So if you're not having
Mhm.
conversations about preferences, you're not taking the opportunity to dive into key parts of actually cultivating a culture around your purpose and your values. So I think it's necessary. Absolutely.
Absolutely.
So I think it's really important to talk about these just to because I think preferences. I mean, all of these traits shape culture, but I think preferences is a big one. And I think about if there's one. I'll just say this quick thought: if there's one moment where preferences get pointed out a lot, think about when you. If you've ever been the new person on a team or the new hire in an organization,
Right.
most of what you're experiencing in terms of trying to learn how to do things is around this preferences category,
Mhm.
right? You're like, what are the rules here? What are, there's a culture, there these hidden rules of like, oh, this is the way they do things. And
Right.
so yeah, talk to your new staff, talk to your new hires. Yeah, they'll tell if you don't know what your preferences are on your team, and you don't know, like, I don't know, do we have any preferences? Do we have any traditions? Ask your new hires. I bet they could
Yeah.
tell you.
That's so
Quick,
true, man. So
quick thought
true.
on that. Yeah, on how these things shape our culture. So yeah, I think when if we dive into it, there's an opportunity to really show how much you value people, find out people's stories, what is behind their preferences, dialogue about these things. It doesn't have to be something that is conflict. It's just like, hey, you've got your preference, I've got mine, but let's just talk about the story behind that. A lot of opportunity for just connecting as people, connecting around your values, your purpose, and um, taking the tension and turning it into something positive.
Absolutely.
Hmm.
Completely agree, man. And I think again, this is taking the time to unpack these things to have dialogue about it is a way to serve people. I mean, that's ultimately what this is about. It's
Yeah.
a way to to kind of break down some of those barriers to unity, and those barriers that will try to get in the way of community. We want to really strive. This is a
Yeah.
tool to help us serve the people we work alongside, and hopefully unpack and allow for a really strong, culturally diverse, but culturally strong workplace.
Yeah.
So
It's
yeah,
like
this is
diverse but still unified, right? It's
yes,
like
yeah,
I can learn your preferences, and I can learn the stories behind that and be like, "Oh my gosh, like now that I hear this context behind it, I mean, I'm not really annoyed by this thing that's kind of just that thing that makes you you, that preference that you have. I'm actually like that kind of informs mine. It shapes mine a little bit more,
yes,
and it actually, I think, strengthens a team. It connects you more. It
hmm
creates a humanness to all these weird quirks we all have, right?
yeah,
And
it's true.
yeah, so anyway, diving deep into these traits, we encourage you to just to explore these things. And like we said earlier, there is on another spot on our Facebook page, check out our units. Unit 2, it's going through the book right now. The most recent post was about culture. The first couple chapters of the book just go right into this. What is culture? How do you create it? How do you then cultivate it once you establish it? And if you are really fascinated about how to lead well and create these environments where people feel fulfilled and they feel connected to purpose, check out that other unit we have going on. Get the book and dive in with us. And we'll be back next week with another one of these 5 common traits, and
Yeah,
we'll be unpacking these more. So a couple other things that looking for just practical application and resources and tools. Go ahead and throw the link up there to our culture map. You can go to our website, alignleadthrive.com/culture-map. And from there, you can purchase a culture assessment for your team that everyone on the team takes together. Gives everyone a chance to kind of just input a little bit of their story. So that this assessment just kind of scratches the surface for you, but then you get a resource in the digital download that's going to have additional questions to dialogue about the diversity on your team in these 5 common traits, and just go deep with one another, exploring these things and finding out like how each person is unique, is diverse, but still a key part of fulfilling your purpose week in and week out. So check out our website. That's available for purchase for you and your team, and continue to uh, find those things. We've got more resources coming, so stay connected to us here on our Facebook page and social media for more info as we go. So
yeah, it was awesome. So this is exciting, guys. We want you to continue to stay with us. Like Josh said, we'll be back next week to unpack another one of our 5 common traits, and we look forward to having you with us each week. So we'll see you then. Thanks, guys.
absolutely. Thanks, guys.